welcome to the deep dive. You've given us some really interesting material today, these excerpts from Eddington's Echo, A Cosmic Civil Rights Saga. And like always, we're going to try and pull out the most crucial bits, the really interesting stuff, so you can get a handle on it without, feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is, okay, it's fiction,
Right.
but it's so deeply tied into the actual real history of the civil rights movement in the American South.
Exactly.
It really shows how stories, even fictional ones, can give us powerful ways to understand complex truths about our own world.
Right. So the central character is this guy, Ellis Langston. And you need to picture him just arriving completely bewildered in this fictional town, Harmony Creek.
Yeah.
And the excerpts just drop you right into that, feeling him being totally out of place and immediately seeing how the town works, socially speaking.
And you see the reactions to him straight away, how he looks, how he sounds. It marks him as different from the jump. It kind of poses that question, doesn't it? How do communities react to outsiders, especially when things are already, well, tense and structured? What sort of assumptions pop up?
Okay, let's stick with that initial feeling for a second, because it's not just about being the new guy. Pretty quickly, Ellis starts seeing, patterns. Things that feel familiar even though he's never been there before. Echoes of his past.
And this is where it gets really compelling, I think. He has these memories, right? Of Zylonian prisoners, the oppression he saw way out in space.
Yeah.
And those memories become like a lens for him to understand Harmony Creek. It makes us think, what are the core ingredients of oppression that just keep showing up?
Yeah.
Different times, different places, maybe different species even, but the same fundamental cruelty.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then. Using Ellis's very unique viewpoint to really get under the skin of oppression in Harmony Creek. We want to explore how it works there, how people fight back, the resistance, and the huge challenges they face trying to get justice.
Which immediately raises the question, how does someone like Ellis, who is so obviously not from there, even begin to understand, let alone get involved in a struggle with such deep local roots?
Well, the excerpts give us a starting point. One of the first big things he sees is this voter registration drive.
Right, and Sheriff Brody and his deputies are just there. Their presence is heavy. You feel it.
Totally. It's this unspoken warning, isn't it? Discouraging people without needing to say much. What does that tell us about how power works sometimes, those subtle methods?
That's such a key insight. It's not always, outright violence. Sometimes it's quieter. A look, a gesture. The deputy bumping into that elderly black man.
Yeah.
It seems small, maybe, but it's deliberate. It's about disrespect, reinforcing that hierarchy, making people feel small and powerless. It speaks volumes about the daily grind of living under that kind of system, doesn't it?
And for Ellis, it hits differently because of his telepathy, right? He gets this intense blast of what he calls psychic poison from Brody and the deputies. He's not just seeing it. He's feeling their prejudice, their contempt, raw. What does that suggest about the psychological weight of prejudice? Not just for the target, but for someone sensitive to it.
It really throws those hidden wounds into sharp relief, doesn't it? That constant unseen barrage of negativity, of dehumanizing thoughts that just hang in the air.
Yeah.
And the thoughts Ellis picks up, just the casual racism.
Yeah.
It's a really stark, unfiltered glimpse into the mindset that keeps that inequality going.
Yeah.
Imagine being exposed to that constantly, how it wears you down.
So in the middle of all this, he meets Sarah Johnston and Pastor Abernathy.
Yeah.
And Sarah, she's suspicious.
Understandably so.
Yeah. Here's a stranger dropping in during a super tense time. Her caution makes perfect sense. What does that initial reaction tell us about maybe the trust dynamics within a community under pressure?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sarah represents that lived reality,
Yeah.
She knows the risks. She's probably seen people come and go, maybe causing trouble. Her suspicion is protective. It's smart. But then there's Pastor Abernathy. Total different vibe. Offers help immediately. And he has this insight almost, like he senses Ellis is there for a reason.
Yeah, he calls him a beacon of light.
What does Abernathy's reaction, his openness, suggest about the role leaders like him can play in these difficult times?
He definitely seems like this anchor. The narrative calls him a beacon of light, and you feel it, his kindness, his wisdom. It cuts through the tension, and his idea that Ellis isn't there by accident, that kind of sets things up for Ellis to get more involved, doesn't it?
It does. It provides a kind of hope, maybe, a sense of purpose. Abernathy reframes Ellis as being lost into something potentially meaningful. That can be incredibly powerful.
Okay, so moving on, Ellis starts getting drawn in. He goes to a community meeting at the church. They're planning the Woolworth's lunch counter
And
protest.
you really see Sarah's leadership here. Her planning sounds very methodical, very organized.
What does that show us about what it actually takes to build a movement like this? It's not just passion, is it?
No, definitely not. It highlights all the background work, the planning, the communication, the grassroots effort. It takes careful thought, collective action, and they mention the songs, the prayers.
Mm-hmm.
That points to the spiritual strength, the community bonding that holds it all together, especially when things get tough. How crucial is that shared belief, that solidarity?
And then Ellis witnesses the protest itself,
Mhm.
the march to Woolworths, and bam, this wave of pure hostility from the white onlookers, the insults, the threats. It's ugly.
Yeah, the contrast is stark. Peaceful protesters met with just raw hatred.
Hmm.
What does that tell us about resistance and the forces pushing back against any change?
It really underscores how deep the prejudice runs and how fiercely people will defend the status quo, even a deeply unjust one. The protesters' piece highlights their moral stance, while the reaction just reveals fear, doesn't it?
Fear and defensiveness.
So during the violence at the counter, Ellis, he's next. He jumps in, impulsively.
Big moment.
Huge, because he stops being just an observer. He acts, and he knows in that moment he might have just shown his hand, revealed something unusual about himself. What pushes someone over that line from watching to acting?
Often it's just that gut feeling, isn't it? That moral line being crossed in front of you and you just can't stand by. For Ellis, it's probably tangled up with his past experiences too, seeing injustice before.
Right.
But it raises that question immediately. What are the consequences? For him personally, intervening like that, especially if he does have abilities, others don't.
Well, Sheriff Brody notices something's off. He starts digging into Ellis, trying to figure out who this guy is.
Yeah, the picture Brody gets is described as fragmented, unsettling. Ellis becomes this unknown factor, this disruption. How do powerful people usually react when something unpredictable enters their controlled system?
They try to understand it, label it, maybe neutralize it.
Exactly. Brody's investigation is classic surveillance, information gathering. It's about maintaining control and sniffing out challenges.
Meanwhile, Ellis is wrestling with his own stuff. Memories of Xylon 1, Alara's sacrifice. It's haunting him. He's really hesitant to use his powers because he knows firsthand how things can go sideways even when you mean well. How does that kind of past trauma shape your choices now?
Oh, massively. Especially experiences involving loss or, unintended bad outcomes.
Yeah.
It makes you conscious, deeply aware of the risks. Ellis isn't just some superhero. He's burdened by the potential harm his powers could cause, as well as the good. That adds so much depth.
And this all comes crashing together when Sarah confronts him. She was at the protest. She saw something.
She's sharp.
Very. She suspects he did more than he's admitting. And his attempts to brush it off, they don't work on her. What does her pushing him tell us about trust inside a movement?
Trust is everything, isn't it? For cohesion, for effectiveness. Sarah's suspicion, it makes sense. An outsider, even meaning well, could be disruptive, maybe have hidden motives. Her directness is about accountability.
But then he talks to Pastor Abernathy again. And Abernathy, he seems to understand the weight Ellis is carrying. He doesn't push for details, but he challenges Ellis, tells him to use this heavy burden for good.
Yeah, how powerful is that? Someone seeing your struggle, not judging, but reframing it as a potential strength, a responsibility.
It's a huge shift in perspective, right?
Right.
Taking what Ellis sees as maybe a curse or at least a danger and calling it a gift with an obligation attached. That kind of moral guidance can be, well, really pivotal.
Definitely. So as things get even hotter in Harmony Creek, Ellis actually tries to use his telepathy on Brody.
Yeah.
Hits a wall. A brick wall, the text says. Just intense resistance. What does that suggest? Maybe about the limits of powers like his against, I don't know, sheer force of will?
Yeah.
Or deeply held hate?
Interesting. It shows his powers aren't some magic wand, right? They can't just fix deep-seated prejudice or complex social issues instantly.
Exactly. But his relationship with Sarah does evolve. He starts sharing some things, metaphorically maybe, drawing on his past without giving away the whole alien story.
And she starts to trust him more. They form an alliance.
It seems so, slowly. Which suggests that shared values, that commitment to the same goal, justice, can actually bridge huge differences. Even suspicion, honesty, even partial honesty, builds connections.
But he's still torn up inside, isn't he? This conflict about intervening versus observing, messing with the timeline. He wants to help desperately, but he's terrified of causing another disaster like what happened on Eddington. He mentions his oath. What are the ethics there, knowing things others don't, potentially changing outcomes?
It's a classic sci-fi dilemma, but grounded here in a very real moral struggle.
Hmm.
Free will, unintended consequences. Ellis feels the weight of responsibility for every choice, every potential ripple effect. It shows he's not taking this lightly at all.
And while he's wrestling with this, he's also learning more about the day-to-day reality for the Black community there, overhearing conversations about money troubles, economic pressure.
And Sarah shares stories too, doesn't she? Past struggles, small victories, painful losses. It really brings home the human cost of the fight.
How does hearing those personal stories, that history, change things? Does it make the commitment deeper?
Absolutely. It shifts it from an abstract idea of injustice to something concrete, personal.
Yeah.
You understand the sacrifices, the resilience, the stakes involved. It fuels the urgency, connects you emotionally.
So Brody's getting more suspicious. He even assigns Deputy Miller to basically pale Ellis.
Right, though Miller seems a bit half-hearted about it. Ellis picks up on his thoughts, boredom, prejudice, yeah, but maybe also a flicker of doubt, a questioning.
Interesting. Does that hint that even within these oppressive systems, people aren't always 100% monolithic, that there might be cracks?
I think so. It suggests that individuals within the system might have their own doubts, their own conscience nagging at them, maybe potential allies where you wouldn't expect them. It keeps things from being too black and white.
Then things really heat up. Brody confronts Ellis directly at a gas station. No more subtlety, just threats.
Yeah, menacing stuff.
And Ellis pushes back, defiantly. That feels like a real turning point in how they relate to each other, right? Openly adversarial now.
Definitely. Ellis isn't trying to hide or just observe anymore. He's standing his ground. That defiance is significant, both for him and maybe for others watching too. It signals he won't be intimidated.
Around this time, he has this moment of intense distress, reaches out telepathically to someone called Eris.
Which triggers a flashback.
Yeah.
Eddington, this dampener grid. Eris's sacrifice.
Oof. And that just throws gasoline on his fear of unintended consequences, doesn't it? He goes to Abernathy again for guidance. How do those old wounds just keep impacting the present?
Trauma echoes, you know? It shapes how you see risk, how you make decisions. That flashback shows how raw those scars still are for Ellis, how deeply his past informs his fear of using his powers, even for good.
It's interesting, too, how the narrative contrasts this with his past on Xylon 1, slowly opening up to someone named Kale Tar about his abilities, and Kale Tar eventually accepting him.
Yeah, what's the parallel there? Maybe about building trust across huge divides.
Could be. It suggests that trust isn't instant. It's earned through vulnerability, through shared experience, through showing your true self, maybe. Just like he had to with Kale Tar. He's slowly doing that, in a way, in Harmony Creek.
Makes sense. And we see him starting to use his insights more actively now, but carefully.
Right. He guides Sarah and the others using his intuition, which is obviously boosted by his telepathy and future knowledge, like suggesting that alternative route for the march.
Yeah. How do you offer that kind of guidance without blowing your cover, without revealing how you know?
It's a tricky balance, isn't it? You have to frame it naturally, maybe as a gut feeling or just sound strategic thinking. He can't seem too knowledgeable or raises more questions.
And Sarah, while trusting him more, still seems cautious. She keeps bringing them back to their principles, right? That the way they fight matters.
Yeah, why is that so crucial for a movement? Sticking to your values even when the other side plays dirty.
It's about legitimacy, isn't it? And long-term sustainability. If you compromise your core beliefs, you risk losing support, both internal and external. You risk becoming what you're fighting against. Sarah's like the moral compass.
And Abernathy keeps reinforcing that, too, reminding Ellis about the responsibility that comes with his gift.
That idea that power, any kind of power, social, political, or, psychic, comes with an obligation to use it wisely, ethically, for others, not just yourself. It's a universal theme, really.
We also see Ellis making these small efforts to just fit in.
Yeah.
Connect with people on a human level. How important are those little things?
Hugely important, I think. Especially for an outsider. It shows solidarity, builds rapport, breaks down those us versus them barriers. It shows he's invested in them as people, not just a cause.
But despite that, the rumors about him keep swirling in the Black community. Understandable, really. Who is this guy?
Exactly. In communities that have faced betrayal or exploitation, caution about outsiders is baked in. Fear and uncertainty breed suspicion easily.
And Brody's hostility just keeps ratcheting up. He threatens Ellis outright during a community picnic.
Yeah, getting bolder. More desperate, maybe.
And Ellis reacts by flashing back again this time to mental shielding training on Xylon 1, preparing himself.
It shows he's not passive. He's anticipating the conflict, drawing on past skills to face a new threat. Resilience comes from experience.
Then Brody cooks up this plan to frame a young activist, Marcus, at the diner.
Nasty move.
But Ellis gets wind of it, warns Sarah subtly, and they manage to shut it down, foil the plan.
Big win for them. And a demonstration of Ellis's value, using his abilities defensively, strategically. How does a victory like that impact morale?
Must be huge. It builds confidence, shows they can outsmart Brody sometimes, strengthens their resolve, and probably solidifies Ellis's place within the core group even more.
But Brody's furious, naturally. His plan failed. So he escalates again, turns to the White Citizens Council.
Oh boy, that sounds serious. More aggressive tactics.
Yeah, it signals he's willing to bring in more extreme elements, use rougher methods. It's a classic pattern when control starts slipping, double down, use more force.
And that fear must ripple through the Black community again. The hardship intensifies.
Definitely. Yet Sarah and Abernathy, their determination doesn't waver. They're still going ahead with the big march. Their courage is incredible. What keeps people going when the danger ramps up like that?
Deep conviction, I guess. Community support. Believing in what you're fighting for, even when it's terrifying.
All of that. Solidarity, faith, that vision of a better future. It's powerful stuff.
So the tension in town is sky high, and Ellis is feeling it literally telepathic overload from all the emotion.
And through that noise, he picks up Brody's actual plans for the march. Dogs, fire hoses, maybe even planting evidence to frame protesters.
Wow. Okay, knowing that changes everything. How does having that intel affect their strategy?
It's a massive advantage. It means they're not walking into an ambush completely blind. They can prepare, mitigate, counterplan. It empowers Sarah and Abernathy to make informed, though still incredibly difficult, decisions.
And they decide to go ahead anyway, right? Knowing the risks, but taking precautions.
Yeah, which speaks volumes about their commitment. They refuse to be intimidated into silence. It's that core principle, again, standing up for justice requires courage, sometimes taking calculated risks.
And Ellis prepares himself too. Mental exercises, trying to refine his control, getting ready.
Focus is key in those high-pressure moments, right? Honing his skills, making sure he can use them effectively, responsibly if needed.
So the march begins. And the visual is powerful, the hope and determination on one side, the hate and animosity on the other. All the town's tensions are right there out in the open.
It's that public assertion of rights, isn't it? A direct challenge. You can feel the potential for violence just hanging in the air.
Brody gives the order to move in. The assault starts. But Ellis acts. Subtly. Telepathically. Sowing confusion, hesitation among the deputies, the thugs.
He disrupts their attack without overt force. Buys the markers a moment, prevents an immediate riot. It shows a different kind of resistance, maybe. De-escalation through strategic intervention.
Possibly. But it doesn't stop Brody completely. He singles out Ellis, shouting accusations, pulling his gun. It gets personal. Public.
Brody sees Ellis as the linchpin, the key threat now. He's desperate, willing to use lethal force to remove that obstacle.
And Ellis. He pushes back harder than ever, reflects Brody's own hatred outwards, making it almost visible, tangible to those nearby.
Whoa. So he exposes Brody's malice, not just through words, but through this psychic projection, making everyone feel it.
That's how it reads, a public unmasking of the sheriff's inner ugliness, and inadvertently a revelation of Ellis's own power. What does that do to the power dynamic?
It shatters things, exposes the truth in a way that's undeniable. It could completely undermine Brody's authority, maybe sway people who were just going along with him before. It's a potential catalyst for real change.
But the strain is immense. Ellis collapses. His abilities are out in the open now, no hiding it. The crowd, Sarah, Abernathy, everyone sees a massive turning point.
Yeah. When the impossible happens right in front of you, it changes everything, doesn't it? It forces everyone to reassess reality, creates this space for, well, who knows what, uncertainty, but also potential.
So in the immediate aftermath, the town is reeling. The white community is split, some horrified by Brody, others maybe doubling down. The Black community feels this fragile hope.
And Brody tries to spin it, control the narrative through the media, intimidation. But maybe it's too late. The text hints even some of his own men are having second thoughts.
Those cracks are widening. Meanwhile, Ellis is wiped out, physically, mentally, and probably terrified of the implications now that everyone knows what he can do.
But Sarah and Abernathy are right there. Unwavering support, guiding him on using this gift responsibly. How vital is that kind of support network when you're dealing with something so huge?
Absolutely crucial, I'd imagine. You need that ethical anchor, that community backing to navigate something so extraordinary and potentially dangerous.
And you see these small shifts continuing in town. People questioning Brody, maybe offering quiet support to the movement. The momentum, however fragile, seems to be shifting.
Those little acts of courage starting to add up. It feels like real change is starting to bubble up.
And then, bam, the wormhole reappears.
Talk about timing. Suddenly, Ellis has this impossible choice. Go home, back to his own time, his own life, or stay in Harmony Creek with these people in this fight he's become so central to.
That's a heavy one. Loyalty to your past versus connection to your present. What weighs more when you're facing a choice like that?
For Ellis, it seems to be the connections he's made. The narrative focuses on the faces Sarah, Abernathy, the community starting to find its voice, the purpose he's found there.
And he makes the call. My place is here now. My service is needed in this fight for justice. Powerful declaration.
It really is. It feels like a complete transformation, doesn't it? Finding his true belonging, not where he came from, but where he found meaning and purpose.
Absolutely. He's no longer just an outsider observing. He's fully committed. He's found his place, his fight.
So the wormhole fades, Ellis stays. He's got this sense of resolve now. And those positive changes in Harmony Creek, they continue, slowly but surely. He found his home, in a way, in the middle of all that struggle. What does that tell us about finding purpose in unexpected places?
Maybe that purpose isn't always about some grand destiny you seek out. Maybe it's about responding to the needs right in front of you, connecting with people, contributing to something bigger than yourself, wherever you happen to land.
So wrapping up this deep dive into Eddington's Echo, some really powerful themes emerge, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. Ellis's story, even though it's sci-fi, really drives home how universal the fight against oppression is. It crosses time, planets, everything.
And it highlights just how vital individual courage is. And community resilience, solidarity, all those things that fuel the fight against injustice. Even small actions can make waves. We hope that journeying through these excerpts with us has given you, our listeners, some real food for thought about social change, about the tough choices people face when confronted by injustice.
Which brings us to our final thought for you to mull over. How do individuals contribute to change when things seem impossible? What's the right balance, if there is one, between intervening and observing when you see injustice?
Yeah, and what does Ellis's story suggest about finding purpose, finding belonging in places and times you never expected?
We really encourage you to maybe look more into the actual history of the civil rights movement. Think about how these struggles still resonate today. What are your own takeaways from Ellis's journey? Let us know.
Absolutely. Until our next deep dive, keep thinking, keep questioning.